I returned from war only to find myself in a different kind of battle, one where the enemy was living under my own roof. This is the story of how the person I should have trusted the most systematically dismantled my family. The scent of my mother's pot roast hit me the moment I stepped through the front door of my childhood home. It was February 2023, and after 4 years in the Marines with 2 deployments to the Middle East, I was finally home for good. Behind me, Emma struggled with our 2-year-old son, Liam, who was cranky after the 6-hour drive. "Let me help you with him," I said, reaching for my son, but Emma waved me off. "I've got him, Jake. You get the bags." There was a flatness to her voice that I attributed to exhaustion. The past few months had been rough, me finishing my service, her quitting her job, us selling our small apartment near Camp Lejeune. Moving back to my hometown wasn't either of our first choices, but with the housing market what it was and my uncertain job prospects, living with my parents for a few months seemed like the only logical solution. My father appeared in the hallway, his tall frame slightly more stooped than I remembered. His smile, though, was the same, cautious but genuine. "Welcome home, son." He embraced me briefly, then turned to Emma and his grandson. "And there's my little man." My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. At 58, Diane Mercer still maintained the polished appearance I remembered from childhood. Perfectly styled hair, tasteful makeup, clothes that were casual but never sloppy. She embraced me tightly. "My boy is finally home," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Then she pulled back, studying my face. "You look tired, Jake. War ages a man." Behind her, I noticed my father's slight wince at her words. "It's just the drive, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "We're all exhausted." "Well, dinner's almost ready. Emma, dear, let me show you to your room. You can put Liam down for a nap before we eat." As they disappeared upstairs, my father helped me bring in the luggage. "Your mother's been cooking all day," he said quietly. "She's excited to have you all here." There was something in his tone that I couldn't quite place. A warning, maybe, or a plea for understanding. But I was too tired to decipher it then. That night, after Liam was asleep in the portable crib we'd set up in the small guest room, Emma and I lay in my old bedroom, surrounded by football trophies and faded posters. "This is temporary," I promised her, reaching for her hand across the narrow gap between our twin beds that my mother had pushed together. "3 months tops, and we'll have enough saved for our own place." Emma squeezed my hand but said nothing. In the dim light filtering through the blinds, her profile was unreadable. "Are you okay with all this?" I asked. "I know it's not ideal." "It's fine, Jake," she said, turning toward me. "Your mom's being really nice. She said she'll help with Liam while we both look for jobs." "That's great," I said, relieved. "See? It'll work out." But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way my father seemed to walk on eggshells around my mother, the forced cheerfulness in the air during dinner, the way my mother had dominated every conversation. I should have paid more attention to these first warning signs. Maybe then I could have prevented what was coming. The first few weeks passed in a blur of job applications and adjusting to civilian life. My father, who owned a modest construction company, offered me work right away, but I hesitated. I joined the Marines partly to forge my own path, different from his. Still, as rejection emails piled up, I began to reconsider. Meanwhile, Emma seemed to be adapting well. She'd found part-time work at the local library, and my mother was thrilled to spend time with Liam on the days Emma worked. They'd formed an unexpected bond, those two, my wife and my mother. I often came home to find them talking quietly in the kitchen, their conversations stopping abruptly when I entered. "Just girl talk," my mother would say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. One evening, about a month after we'd moved in, I overheard them talking in the sunroom while I was grabbing a beer from the garage fridge. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but my mother's words stopped me cold. "Men like them don't change, Emma. I learned that the hard way." "Jake's not like that," Emma responded, but her voice lacked conviction. "Sweetheart, I've watched him grow up. He's his father's son in every way, stubborn, self-centered when it comes to his goals. Robert always put his business before our marriage, before our family. All those nights I waited up." She sighed heavily. "And now look at Jake, turning down a stable job with his father because of his pride. He just wants to find something that uses his skills from the service," Emma defended me, but weakly. Of course he does. And in the meantime, you're working part-time and living in his parents' house. Is that what you pictured when you married him? When you had Liam? I wanted to burst in to defend myself, but something held me back. Was this what my mother really thought of me? Of my father? And more disturbingly, how often did she have these conversations with Emma? That night, I tried to talk to Emma about it, but she brushed it off. Your mom's just looking out for me, Jake. She knows what it's like to be married to a Mercer man. She smiled as if it were a joke, but the words stung. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. Nothing. Just that she understands the challenges. Emma turned away, effectively ending the conversation. I lay awake that night, replaying the conversation I'd overheard, thinking about my parents' marriage. Had it always been unhappy? My father worked hard, yes, but I had memories of family vacations, of laughter, of my parents dancing in the kitchen. Had that all been a facade? The next day, I accepted the job with my father's company. Not just because we needed the money, but because I wanted to understand him better, to see if my mother's insinuations had any truth to them. Working with my father revealed a different man than the one my mother had described. He was respected by his employees, fair in his dealings, and he always made time to help others. He never mentioned any discord with my mother, but occasionally I'd catch him looking at her with a mixture of sadness and resignation when she made one of her cutting remarks disguised as humor. Your father forgot our anniversary again, she announced at dinner one evening, her tone light but her eyes hard. 35 years, Robert. You'd think that would be worth remembering. My father's face fell. Diane, that's next week. I've already made reservations at… Oh. She looked genuinely surprised. I must have my dates mixed up. But the damage was done. The implication that he habitually forgot important dates hung in the air. Over the following weeks, I noticed more and more how my mother would make these small jabs, always plausibly deniable, always with a quick recovery if challenged. And increasingly, these comments extended to me. Jake was always such a determined child, she'd tell Emma over coffee. Once he set his mind on something, nothing else mattered. Not people's feelings, not consequences. She'd laugh, like that time in high school when he was so focused on making the football team that he missed his own grandmother's funeral. Mom, Grandma died when I was 22 and deployed, I corrected her, bewildered by the fabrication. Did she? Oh, I must be thinking of when you missed her birthday celebration because of football camp. She was so hurt, poor thing. I had no memory of this incident either, but Emma was looking at me differently now, a small crease between her eyebrows. These subtle distortions of my character and history continued, and I began to notice changes in Emma. The way she'd sometimes pull away when I reached for her, how she seemed to confide more in my mother than in me, how she'd question my decisions in a way she never had before. Are you sure you should be spending money on new work boots? She asked one evening. Your mom mentioned that your father has a whole collection of barely used ones. I need my own equipment, Emma, I replied, frustrated. And we can afford a pair of boots. Can we? Because your mother showed me the household budget she made for us and… Wait, what? My mother made us a budget? Emma looked defensive. She's just trying to help. She knows how tight things are. Things aren't that tight, I said, though truthfully I wasn't entirely sure. Emma had taken over our finances when I was deployed, and I hadn't given much thought to our exact financial situation since we'd moved in with my parents, and our finances aren't my mother's business. Well, someone needs to think about our future, Emma snapped, storming out of the room. That night, I went through our bank statements and was relieved to find that while we weren't wealthy, we were far from destitute. Why had my mother implied otherwise to Emma? And why had Emma believed her over me? The questions kept me awake, and sometime past midnight, I heard soft voices downstairs, curious. I crept down to find my mother and Emma at the kitchen table, heads bent close together. It's the same pattern, my mother was saying softly. Robert would get defensive about money too. It's how they maintain control. I don't think Jake's trying to control me, Emma said, but she sounded uncertain. Of course you don't. I didn't see it with Robert either, not for years. But ask yourself, why doesn't he want you to know the real state of your finances? Why get angry when I try to help? I wasn't angry, I said, stepping into the kitchen. Both women startled. I'm confused about why you're discussing our finances at midnight behind my back. My mother recovered first. Jake, dear, we were just talking. Emma's worried, naturally, about your family's future. I've been through it all before. Been through what exactly? I asked, my patience wearing thin. A husband who keeps his wife in the dark, who resents any input from others, who... That's not what's happening here, I interrupted. Emma and I have always been transparent with each other, or at least we were until recently. Emma looked torn, glancing between my mother and me. I think we should all get some sleep, my mother said smoothly, standing up. Emotions are running high, and things always look clearer in the morning. She kissed Emma's cheek and gave me a sad smile before leaving the kitchen. Emma wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm just scared, Jake. We have Liam to think about, and we're living with your parents at 30. We have a plan, I reminded her. This is temporary. 3 months, remember? It's already been 2, she said quietly. And what's really changed? I had no answer for her. As she brushed past me to go upstairs, I felt the first real tremor of fear that something fundamental was shifting in our marriage, something I couldn't quite identify yet. Little did I know that the ground beneath my feet was about to give way entirely. On a warm Thursday in late April, I came home from work early, hoping to take Emma and Liam to a nearby park. My father had given me the afternoon off after we'd finished a big project ahead of schedule. The house was quiet when I entered. My mother's car was gone. She volunteered at the hospital on Thursdays, but Emma's was in the driveway. I called out, but no one answered. Thinking she might be napping with Liam, I headed upstairs. The guest room was empty, Liam's crib neatly made. Our bedroom door was closed. I knocked softly and, hearing no response, opened it. Emma was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me. A man in a suit stood by the window, looking uncomfortable. "Emma," I said, pushing the door wider. She turned, her eyes red-rimmed, but her expression oddly resolved. "Jake, you're home early." "Yeah, we finished up?" I trailed off, looking at the stranger. "Who's this?" The man cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, my name is Daniel Kaplan. I'm an attorney." He held out a manila envelope. "I've been asked to serve you with these papers." Time seemed to slow as I took the envelope. My hands moved mechanically, opening it, pulling out the documents inside. Bold letters swam before my eyes. Petition for dissolution of marriage. "What is this?" I asked, though I knew exactly what it was. "Emma, what's going on?" She stood, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. "I think it's best if we talk after Mr. Kaplan leaves." The attorney nodded, clearly eager to exit the increasingly tense situation. "I'll see myself out. Mrs. Mercer has my contact information." When he was gone, the silence between Emma and me stretched painfully. "Where's Liam?" I finally asked. "With your mother. She took him to her friend Carol's house." Of course she did. My mother had orchestrated this entire moment. "You're divorcing me?" It wasn't a question. Emma's chin lifted slightly. "Yes. Why?" "Because I can't do this anymore, Jake. The uncertainty, the financial instability, the way you shut me out of decisions." "What are you talking about? When have I ever shut you out?" "You don't see it," she said with frustration. "You don't see how you're becoming just like your father." There it was, my mother's influence, her words coming from my wife's mouth. "My father is a good man," I said quietly. "A hard-working man who's given us a place to stay, who's given me a job." "After you had no other options," Emma countered. "And now we're trapped here, dependent on your parents, with no exit plan." "We have an exit plan. 3 months. That was the deal. It's barely been 2. And what's changed in those 2 months, Jake? We're no closer to moving out than when we arrived." I stared at her, bewildered. "We've been saving money. I've been working every day. How can you say nothing's changed?" "Your mother showed me the numbers," Emma said, as if that explained everything. "At the rate we're going, it'll be a year before we can afford our own place, not 3 months." "What numbers?" "Emma, whatever my mother's been telling you." "Don't," she interrupted sharply. "Don't try to make this about your mother. She's been nothing but supportive. She's the one who helped me see the reality of our situation when you wouldn't." I felt like I was drowning, struggling to make sense of what was happening. "So that's it? You're just ending our marriage? What about counseling? What about trying to work through whatever issues you think we have?" "I have tried, Jake. For months before we moved here, I tried to talk to you about our future, about my concerns. You always brushed them off, said everything would work out." Had she? I searched my memory. There had been conversations, yes, about money, about what we'd do after my service ended, but I'd never sensed this level of dissatisfaction, this readiness to walk away. "And Liam?" I asked, my voice breaking. What about our son? I'm filing for primary custody, she said, her voice softening slightly. You'll have visitation rights, of course. Of course, I echoed hollowly. And where will you live? Where will my son live? Your mother has offered to let us stay here until I get on my feet. She's even talking about converting the basement into an apartment for us. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with devastating clarity. My mother had planned this, all of it. The private conversations, the financial help, the gradual poisoning of Emma's perception of me, of my father. This is what she wants, I said slowly. My mother. She wants you and Liam here, under her roof, under her control. She wants to push me out, just like she's trying to push my father out. Emma's expression hardened. This isn't about your mother, Jake. This is about us, about the fact that we want different things, that we're moving in different directions. Are we? Or is that what my mother has convinced you? I think you should leave, Emma said, turning away. Give yourself some time to process this. We can talk about the details later. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, anger finally breaking through my shock. This is my parents' house. Your father said you could stay in the apartment above the garage at the construction office. There's a bed there, up just for now until we figure things out. My father knew. He'd known this was coming and hadn't warned me. I grabbed a duffel bag and stuffed it with clothes, toiletries, whatever I could think of in my stunned state. Emma watched silently from the doorway. Can I say goodbye to Liam? I asked, pausing at the top of the stairs. He'll be back tomorrow. You can see him then. As I walked to my truck, the divorce papers clutched in my hand. I felt like I was moving through a nightmare. How had my life imploded so completely in the span of 20 minutes? And why couldn't Emma see that she was being manipulated? But the worst was yet to come. The apartment above my father's construction office was little more than a glorified storage room with a fold-out couch and a mini fridge. It had been used occasionally by employees who needed to crash after late nights on job sites. Now, it was my home. I spent that first night in a daze, alternating between disbelief, anger, and a crushing sadness. I called Emma repeatedly, but she didn't answer. I thought about driving back to the house, demanding that we talk this through. But something held me back. I needed time to think, to understand what had happened and how to fix it. The next morning, my father appeared at the apartment door, his expression grave. I brought you some breakfast, he said, holding up a bag from the local diner, and coffee. I let him in, but said nothing as he set the food on the small table. Son, I know you're angry. Did you know? I interrupted. Did you know Emma was filing for divorce? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Not the exact timing, but yes, I knew she was considering it. Your mother has been encouraging her to think about her options. And you didn't think to warn me? Your own son? I tried, Jake. In my own way, I tried to signal that something wasn't right. But your mother? He trailed off, looking out the small window. Your mother is very convincing when she wants something. What does she want? To destroy my marriage? To take my son away from me? She wants control, he said simply. She always has. Over me, over you, over the family narrative. I think she sees Emma and Liam as her second chance, a do-over where she can be the central figure, the decision maker. Why would Emma go along with that? Your mother can be very persuasive. She doesn't present herself as controlling, just concerned, helpful, insightful. She plants seeds of doubt and then nurtures them until the other person thinks the ideas were their own all along. I thought about the conversations I'd overheard, the subtle ways my mother had been rewriting my history, painting me as selfish and unreliable. Why have you stayed with her all these years? I asked. My father's smile was sad. I love her despite everything, and I believed I could shield you from the worst of it. Clearly, I failed. We ate in silence for a while, both lost in our thoughts. I need to talk to Emma, I said finally. Make her see what's happening. Be careful, my father warned. Direct confrontation rarely works with your mother, and Emma's convinced that she's making this choice independently. After he left, I tried calling Emma again. This time, she answered. Jake, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I just want to talk, Emma, face to face. I want to understand what happened, how we got here. She sighed. Fine. I'll meet you at the park tomorrow. Your mother can watch Liam. No, I said firmly. I want to see my son too. Bring him. There was a pause. Okay, noon at Riverside Park. I spent the rest of the day and most of the night trying to organize my thoughts, to find the words that would make Emma see the truth. I rehearsed arguments, remembered happy moments from our relationship, tried to pinpoint when things had started to change. It all led back to my mother's influence. The next day at the park, Emma looked tired but resolute as she pushed Liam on the swings. My heart constricted at the sight of my son, laughing as he soared through the air, oblivious to the fracturing of his family. "Hey, buddy," I said, approaching cautiously. "Daddy!" Liam squealed, his face lighting up. I took over from Emma, pushing my son gently, drinking in his giggles, memorizing the feel of his small back beneath my hands. Emma sat on a nearby bench, watching us. After a while, I suggested Liam play in the sandbox where we could keep an eye on him while talking. "I don't understand how we got here," I began once we were seated on the bench. 2 months ago, we were making plans for our future, for our family. "Things weren't good long before we moved in with your parents, Jake," Emma said warily. "You were distant during your deployments, and even when you came home, you were elsewhere." "I was adjusting to civilian life. You know how hard that transition can be. It's more than that. Your mother helped me see the pattern, how you withdraw when things get tough, how you make unilateral decisions." "My mother," I repeated, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Everything seems to come back to what my mother told you. She understands the situation better than anyone. She's lived it. What she's doing is manipulating you, Emma. She's trying to separate us, to keep you and Liam under her roof and under her influence." Emma's expression hardened. "There you go again, blaming others for your problems. Your mother warned me you might do this." "Of course she did. Don't you see? She's been anticipating my reactions, preparing you for them, framing everything I say or do as proof of whatever narrative she's created." "I think we're done here," Emma said, standing up. "You clearly aren't ready to take responsibility for your part in this." "Emma, please." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'll have Liam ready at 10 tomorrow morning. You can take him for a few hours." Watching them walk away, my son looking back over Emma's shoulder with confusion on his small face, I felt a despair so profound it was physical, like a weight crushing my chest. I returned to the apartment and spent the afternoon in a fog of misery, unable to focus on anything beyond the loss of my family. My father called, asking if I wanted to come to dinner, but I declined. I couldn't face my mother, not yet. As evening fell, I heard a knock at the door. Assuming it was my father checking on me again, I opened it without looking. Daniel Kaplan, the same attorney who had served me the divorce papers, stood there with another manila envelope. "Mr. Mercer," he said, his professional demeanor unable to completely mask his discomfort, "I need to serve you with these papers as well." Confused, I took the envelope. Inside was another set of legal documents, but these weren't about my marriage. They were addressed to my father. Petition for dissolution of marriage, Robert James Mercer and Diane Elizabeth Mercer. I looked up at Kaplan in shock. "My mother is divorcing my father?" He nodded uncomfortably. "She asked that these be delivered to you first, as a courtesy to your father. She thought it might be easier coming from you." As Kaplan retreated down the stairs, I stood frozen in the doorway, the second set of divorce papers in my hands. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This had never been just about my marriage. It was about both Mercer men, about my mother's grand plan to restructure the family according to her vision. And she was using Emma and my son as pawns in her game. I drove to my parents' house in a state of cold fury, the divorce papers for my father on the passenger seat beside me. It was nearly 9 at night, and lights glowed warmly from the windows as I pulled into the driveway. The scene looked so normal, so deceptively peaceful. Inside, I found Emma and my mother at the kitchen table, cups of tea before them, their conversation stopping abruptly as I entered. My father was nowhere to be seen. "Jake," my mother said, recovering quickly. "We weren't expecting you tonight." I placed the manila envelope on the table between them. "Clearly not. Where's Dad?" "He's in the den watching baseball." My mother's eyes flicked to the envelope, a brief flash of recognition crossing her face. "Emma, dear, would you mind checking on Liam? I thought I heard him stirring." Emma looked between us uncertainly, but nodded and left the room. My mother waited until her footsteps had retreated upstairs before speaking. "I see Daniel found you," she said calmly. "I'd hoped to speak with your father myself tomorrow." What are you doing, Mom? I asked, keeping my voice low. First my marriage, now yours? She sighed, as if I were a child failing to grasp a simple concept. I'm creating a better future for all of us, Jake. Your marriage was already in trouble. Emma had concerns long before you moved back here. I simply helped her find the courage to make a difficult decision. By poisoning her against me, by twisting the truth about who I am, about our finances, I merely pointed out patterns she was already noticing but couldn't articulate. The same patterns I've endured with your father for 35 years. She reached for her tea, her hand steady. It's time for a change, for all of us. You and your father, you're so alike. Stubborn, set in your ways, unable to see how your actions affect others. And you're what? The victim in all this? The wise counselor helping others see the light? I'm a woman who spent decades sublimating her own needs for her husband's career, for her son's choices. I'm done with that life. Emma and Liam deserve better than to repeat my mistakes, and if you were honest with yourself, you'd admit that you're not ready for the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood. Not yet. That's not your decision to make, I said, struggling to control my rising anger. It was mine and Emma's, and you deliberately drove a wedge between us. I opened her eyes, my mother corrected, just as I'm trying to open yours now. This arrangement will be better for everyone. Emma and Liam will have stability here with me. You can have regular visits while you figure out what you really want from life. Your father can finally retire and pursue those hobbies he's always talking about. And you get exactly what you want. Control over everyone. A house full of people dependent on you. A flicker of irritation crossed her face, the first crack in her composed facade. That's unfair, Jake. I'm offering help. Security. You're offering a cage, I countered, with yourself as the jailer. I think you should leave, she said coldly. You're clearly not in a state to have a rational conversation. I'm not going anywhere until I talk to Dad. As if summoned, my father appeared in the doorway, his expression wary as he took in the scene before him. Jake? What's going on? I picked up the envelope and held it out to him. Mom has something she wants to tell you, or rather, something she had her lawyer tell you, through me. My father took the envelope slowly, his eyes never leaving my mother's face. Even before he opened it, I could see that on some level he knew what was coming. Diane? He questioned softly. My mother's chin lifted. It's for the best, Robert. You know our marriage hasn't been working for years. A heavy silence fell as my father opened the envelope and scanned the documents inside. His shoulders slumped slightly, but he didn't look surprised, just deeply, profoundly sad. I see, he said finally. And the timing? With Jake and Emma? An opportunity to make a clean break for all of us, my mother replied, to start fresh. With you keeping the house, my father noted, reading further, and Emma and Liam staying here with you. It makes the most sense. You've never liked this house anyway. You always said it was too big, too expensive, and Emma needs support right now. My father folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the envelope. May I ask what your plan is, Diane? Once both your husband and son are out of the picture? Once you've guided Emma through her divorce as you see fit? Something in his tone made my mother shift uncomfortably. I told you, a fresh start. Emma and Liam will have the security they need, I'll have companionship, and both of you will have your freedom. My freedom, my father repeated thoughtfully. Interesting how you present the dismantling of my family as a gift to me. Emma reappeared in the doorway, her expression confused and concerned. Liam's fast asleep. What's going on? Family meeting, my mother said brightly, gesturing for Emma to join us. We were just discussing some changes. My mother is divorcing my father, I said bluntly, just like you're divorcing me. Quite the coincidence, isn't it? Emma's eyes widened as she looked between my parents. What? Mrs. Mercer, you didn't say anything about... It wasn't relevant to your situation, dear, my mother interrupted smoothly. Different circumstances entirely. Is it? I challenged. Or is it part of the same plan? Get rid of the Mercer men, keep their wives and children close? Jake, that's enough, my mother snapped, her composure finally slipping. You're upset, I understand that, but don't drag Emma further into this. Don't drag Emma into what, Mom? The truth? The fact that you've been systematically manipulating both our marriages from the moment we moved in? That's ridiculous, my mother scoffed, but her eyes darted to Emma, gauging her reaction. My father laid a hand on my shoulder. Son, perhaps this isn't the right time or place. When is the right time, Dad? After the divorces are final? After Mom has Emma and Liam permanently installed here? After she's rewritten our entire family history? I turned to Emma, desperate for her to understand. Think about it, Emma. The timing, the similar accusations against both me and my father, the convenient solution of you and Liam staying here with my mother. Doesn't it seem orchestrated to you? Emma looked uncertain, glancing between all three of us. I made my own decision, Jake. Your mother supported me, but she did more than support you, I interrupted. She actively shaped your perception of me, of our marriage. She told you half-truths and outright lies about our finances, about my character. Jake, stop, my mother commanded, standing up. You're making a fool of yourself. But I couldn't stop, not now when the truth was finally emerging. Dad, tell Emma how Mom treats you. Tell her about the subtle put-downs, the rewriting of events, the isolation from friends and family. My father looked torn, his gaze moving from my mother to Emma. It's complicated, he began hesitantly. Diane has certain expectations about how things should be. When those expectations aren't met, she can be creative with her recollection of events. Robert, my mother exclaimed, outraged. How dare you? I'm sorry, Diane, but it's true. I've spent decades making excuses for your behavior, reinterpreting your words to find the most charitable meaning. But watching you do the same thing to our son's marriage. He shook his head sadly. I can't stay silent anymore. Emma sank into a chair, her face pale. Mrs. Mercer, is this true? Have you been manipulating me? Of course not, my mother insisted, her voice softening as she reached for Emma's hand. I've only tried to help you see the reality of your situation, just as I finally accepted the reality of mine. These men, she gestured dismissively toward my father and me, they can't bear to take responsibility for their failings. It's always someone else's fault. That's rich coming from you, I said, unable to contain my bitter laugh. You've spent years blaming Dad for every disappointment in your life, and now you're teaching Emma to do the same with me. Emma looked increasingly distressed. I need a moment, she said suddenly, pushing away from the table. This is too much. She fled the room, and I heard her footsteps on the stairs. My mother made to follow her, but my father stepped forward, blocking her path. Let her be, Diane, he said quietly. She needs time to think. My mother's eyes flashed with anger. This is what you've done, Jake. You've upset her with your wild accusations and your inability to accept responsibility for the failure of your marriage. My marriage isn't a failure yet, I said with more confidence than I felt. And the only wild thing here is how thoroughly you've orchestrated this whole situation. I turned to my father. Did you know about her plans? About both divorces? He shook his head slowly. Not explicitly, no, but I've recognized the signs for weeks now. Your mother has a pattern when she's planning a major change. He looked at her with a mixture of sadness and resignation. The increased criticism, the private conversations, the gradual isolation of her target from potential allies. I refuse to listen to this character assassination, my mother said, her voice trembling with either rage or fear. I couldn't tell which. I've only ever wanted what's best for this family. No, my father contradicted gently. You've wanted what's best according to your vision, your plan. Anyone who deviates from that plan becomes the enemy. That's not true, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Then why divorce me now after 35 years, my father asked. Why encourage Emma to divorce Jake just months after they moved in? Why the coordinated legal action? Why keep Emma and Liam here under your roof? My mother had no immediate answer, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for a response that would maintain her narrative of concern and support. In that moment of silence, we heard a sound from the hallway. Emma stood there holding a notebook, my mother's journal, I realized with a start. I found this in your nightstand, Emma said, her voice eerily calm as she addressed my mother. I know I shouldn't have looked, but after what Jake and Mr. Mercer said, I had to know the truth. My mother's face drained of color. Emma, that's private. How dare you? How dare I? Emma's laugh was hollow. You've been planning this for months. It's all in here. How to help Emma see the truth about Jake. How to secure my position as Liam's primary caregiver. How to finally free myself from Robert's stifling presence. She flipped pages in the journal. You even have timelines, bullet points for conversations to have with me. It's it's methodical." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," I said softly. "That was the whole point." My mother seemed to shrink before our eyes, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "You don't understand," she said, her voice small. "None of you understand what it's like to be overlooked, to be taken for granted year after year. I deserved more. I deserve more." "So you decided to destroy 2 marriages to get it?" my father asked. "I was creating something better," she insisted. "A new kind of family, without the disappointments, without the resentments." Emma closed the journal with a decisive snap. "Mrs. Mercer, I appreciate everything you've done for Liam and me these past weeks, but I think it's time I made my own decisions based on the whole truth, not just the parts you wanted me to see." She crossed the kitchen to stand beside me, though she didn't take my hand or offer any other physical gesture of reconciliation. It was enough for now that she had chosen to stand on my side of the divide. My father nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision of his own. "I think it's best if I stay at the construction office tonight. Jake, you're welcome to the guest room here." "Where will I sleep?" Emma asked hesitantly. "Our room," I said. "I'll take the guest room." My mother watched this redistribution of space, this reclaiming of territory, with visible dismay. Her carefully constructed new order was collapsing around her. "This changes nothing," she said finally, her chin lifting in defiance. "The divorce proceedings have already begun, both of them." "Perhaps," my father acknowledged, "but at least now we're all operating with the same information. No more secrets, no more manipulations." As he gathered a few belongings for his night away, and Emma went to check on Liam, I found myself alone with my mother in the kitchen. "Why?" I asked simply. "Why turn my wife against me? Your own son." She met my gaze unflinchingly. "Because you were making the same mistakes your father made. Because Emma deserved better. Because I thought I could give Liam the stable, loving home I never managed to create for you." "By destroying his family?" "By rebuilding it," she corrected, "without the flaws of the original." I shook my head, marveling at her ability to justify her actions, to reframe her manipulation as a noble sacrifice. "I hope someday you'll understand that I did this out of love," she said. "No," I replied, the truth suddenly crystal clear to me. "You did it out of control. Those aren't the same thing, Mom. They never have been." The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life, harder than basic training, harder than combat deployment. Emma and I remained under my parents' roof, but everything had changed. My father returned to the house but took up residence in the guest room. My mother maintained a frosty dignity, speaking to us only when necessary, retreating to her volunteer work and social engagements. Emma and I existed in an uneasy limbo. The divorce proceedings were technically still active, but she had asked her lawyer to pause any further action while she reassessed the situation. We slept in separate rooms and moved carefully around each other, like dancers learning unfamiliar steps. "I feel stupid," she confessed one evening as we sat on the back porch, watching Liam play with his trucks in the sandbox my father had built for him. "How did I not see what she was doing?" "Because she's had decades of practice," I said, "and because some of what she said resonated with real concerns you had. That's how manipulation works. It starts with a grain of truth and builds a mountain of distortion around it." Emma nodded slowly. "There were things I was worried about even before we moved here. Money, your adjustment to civilian life, whether we were on the same page about our future. But your mother, she took those normal concerns and magnified them until they seemed insurmountable." "I should have been more attentive," I admitted. "More aware of what you were feeling, what you needed from me. And I should have talked to you directly instead of letting your mother become my interpreter, my confidant." She sighed, watching our son. "Do you think we can fix this? Us?" It was the question I'd been afraid to ask, afraid to answer. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I want to try. Do you?" She was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on Liam. "Yes," she said finally, "I want to try." It wasn't a declaration of undying love, but it was a beginning, a foundation to build upon. The situation with my parents was more complex. My father, freed from decades of walking on eggshells, seemed both lighter and sadder. He spent more time with Liam, teaching him to identify different tools, letting him help with small projects around the house. He treated my mother with distant courtesy and spent his evenings in the den with the baseball games she had always complained about. My mother's response to her loss of control was to double down on her martyrdom. "I suppose this is my punishment for trying to help," she would say when one of us declined her advice or assistance. "I'm just a convenient villain now." One afternoon, about a month after the confrontation in the kitchen, I found my father in the garage, sorting through boxes of old photographs. "Looking for anything in particular?" I asked, sitting beside him on a stack of storage containers. "Evidence," he said with a small smile. "Proof that it wasn't all bad, all these years." He held up a photo of himself and my mother on what looked like a camping trip, both young and laughing as they posed before a tent. Another showed them dancing at a wedding, her head thrown back in delight as he twirled her. "There were good times," he said softly. "Real ones, not the fabricated memories your mother sometimes creates to suit her narrative. That's what makes all this so complicated." "Are you going through with the divorce?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should have done this 20 years ago when I first recognized the pattern. Another part wonders if it's too late to start over at my age." He looked at me searchingly. "What about you and Emma? We're talking, really talking, for what feels like the first time in months." I hesitated. "We're seeing a counselor, separately and together." "That's good," he said approvingly. "That's very good." "Dad, how did you stand it? All these years with Mom, the way she treated you." He was quiet for a long time, continuing to sort through the photographs as he formulated his response. "I loved her," he said finally. "Still do, in spite of everything. And there were moments, sometimes whole stretches of time, when she was the woman I fell in love with, bright, passionate, full of dreams. But mostly I stayed because I thought it was better for you to have both parents under one roof." His smile was tinged with irony. "Turns out that might have been a miscalculation." "You did your best," I assured him, feeling a surge of affection for this quiet, steady man who had been my constant while my mother's moods and manipulations swirled around us. "Maybe," he acknowledged, "but I should have been honest with you as you got older, should have helped you recognize the patterns so you wouldn't repeat them in your own relationships." We sat in companionable silence for a while, looking through the photographic evidence of a family that had experienced genuine joy alongside the dysfunction. "Whatever you and Emma decide," my father said eventually, "make sure it's what's truly best for Liam. Not what's easiest, not what avoids conflict, but what gives him the most stable, loving environment to grow up in. I'm trying, I promised. We both are." The road back to trust with Emma was long and often painful. We had to relearn how to communicate, how to listen to each other without the filter of my mother's interpretations. The counselor helped, providing tools and perspective that neither of us had possessed before. One breakthrough came unexpectedly, during a seemingly ordinary conversation about our financial situation. "I'd like to go through our accounts together," Emma said one evening after Liam was in bed. "I want us both to have a clear picture of where we stand." We spent hours at the kitchen table with bank statements, bills, and budget worksheets spread before us. It was boring, detailed work, but something profound was happening beneath the surface. We were rebuilding trust, one verified number at a time. "We're not as bad off as I thought," Emma admitted as we finalized our budget. "Your mother made it sound like we were one step away from financial ruin. She exaggerated the problems to make you more dependent on her solutions," I said, careful to keep any hint of "I told you so" from my voice. Emma nodded, looking embarrassed. "I should have come to you directly with my concerns instead of confiding in her. And I should have been more transparent, more proactive about our finances." I reached across the table, offering my hand. After a brief hesitation, she took it. My mother watched our gradual reconciliation with thinly veiled disapproval. "I just hope you know what you're doing, Emma," she would say. "Patterns don't change overnight." But Emma had developed an immunity to my mother's insinuations. "You're right, Mrs. Mercer," she responded coolly after one such comment. "That's why Jake and I are taking our time, making sure we're building something healthy this time." As for my parents' marriage, it remained in limbo. The divorce proceedings continued on paper, but neither seemed eager to finalize them. They existed in parallel in the same house, their interactions formal but not hostile. "I think they're waiting to see what we do," Emma observed one night as we took a rare evening walk, just the two of us, while my parents watched Liam. As if our decision will somehow validate or invalidate theirs. Probably, I agreed. But we can't make our choices based on what might help or hurt them. We have to do what's right for us, for Liam. 3 months after the night of revelations, exactly the time frame we had originally planned for our stay at my parents' house, Emma and I sat down to make a decision. I think we should move out, she said before I could speak. Find our own place, make a fresh start. Relief flooded through me. Yes, absolutely yes. But, she continued, her expression serious, I think we should still table the divorce. I'm not ready to recommit fully, not yet, but I'm also not ready to give up. It wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was honest, and it was a path forward. Okay, I said, we move out, we continue counseling, we keep working on us, and we set boundaries with your mother, Emma added firmly. Titanium-reinforced boundaries, I agreed. We found a small rental house about 20 minutes from my parents. It wasn't fancy, just a 2-bedroom bungalow with a fenced backyard where Liam could play, but it was ours, a neutral space untainted by manipulation and hidden agendas. The day we moved out, my mother maintained her stance of wounded dignity. I suppose this is goodbye then, she said dramatically as Emma loaded the last of Liam's toys into our car. It's not goodbye, Mom, I corrected her. It's just a necessary separation. You're still Liam's grandmother. We're still your family, but we need space to rebuild what was damaged. I was only trying to help, she insisted, but the protest sounded hollow even to her own ears. My father helped carry our belongings, working steadily and saying little until everything was loaded. As I prepared to leave, he pulled me into a tight embrace. I'm proud of you, he whispered, for fighting for your family, for recognizing what needed to change. What about you? I asked. What will you do? He glanced back at the house, at my mother standing stiffly on the porch. I don't know yet, but watching you and Emma has given me clarity I didn't have before. Whatever happens, it will be my choice this time, not a role in someone else's script.